This is the Talkin Bout The Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Talkin Bout The Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by Kyle Staley. I'm Drew Rosenberg, and big show today. I mean, no surprise. I'm just going to jump right in. Indiana basketball finally has its coach, a new era of Indiana basketball under Darian DeVries. Kyle, I'm just going to jump right in, skip asking how you are like I normally do. Your overall, I guess, the temperature of the room. How are you feeling about Indiana basketball right now?
Pretty excited for Indiana basketball. That's a wrap. The coaching search is over with. I feel like it's probably been a month or so, I would say, since Woodson announced that he was going to step down. So obviously there's a lot of speculation, a lot of Twitter talk, a lot of social media talk on who the coach is going to be. You had names like Chris Beard, Scott Drew, Dusty May, even some Bruce Pearl. And then, as of late, it kind of trickled down to, and Brad Stevens, obviously, forgot about him. And then it kind of trickled down to the Ben McCollums, the Brad Brownell from Clemson. Yep. There was always that one name in true Scott Dawson fashion, and we saw this with Kurt Signetti. It was a name that really nobody was kind of really talking about. And, maybe he was trickling there, what if or whatever, but a lot of smoke on Tuesday, especially when Darian DeVries, it turns out he was not going to be a candidate for Iowa. He played at Northern Iowa. He had those Iowa connections. And then, things really, really ramped up with, them saying, a lot of reports saying Indiana is expected, their top target is Darian DeVries. And you literally 20 minutes later, it was announced that he had agreed to be Indiana's new head coach from West Virginia. Obviously, had a tremendous 6 years in Drake, and within a 4-year span, got them to the NCAA tournament three times out of that 4-year span. Was one of the top teams in the Missouri Valley for a long, long time. And Drake's still rolling with Ben McCollum right now as well. Went to West Virginia, took probably the worst Big 12 team there was, a season ago, and turn that into a team that probably should have made the NCAA tournament. It's exciting, and people can be like, comparing him to Archie Miller, it's an Archie Miller type of hire. No, it's not, because I think there's a lot more potential in what Darian DeVries can do, and he's one of the best up and coming head coaches. But the vibe for Indiana basketball, I think it's really, really high right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of been said. Dolson kind of wanted a Signetti type hire, and DeVries is really that. When you look at the turnarounds he's done, just going to his first year at Drake, 24-10. The year before that, Drake team was 17-17. And I just realized they're led by Nico Medved, who's currently Colorado State head coach. So that's a good coach who was at Drake. And DeVries had a 7-game improvement. And then you just go to West Virginia last year. They were, I think, 9-23 in the Big 12. And the Big 12 was worse last year than it is this year. I mean, you had Houston, Arizona, BYU, a bunch of really good teams to the conference. And you see improvement 19-13. I know you're going to be like, they missed the tournament. But the fact West Virginia is in the tournament is one of the biggest jokes I've ever seen. Indiana missing the tournament.
Indiana missing the tournament. Nobody would be complaining if it was Indiana and West Virginia and they took the North Carolina and Xavier spot. I don't think anybody would be complaining other than Xavier fans or North Carolina fans. And absolutely, and you'll say this, but they missed the tournament. Or, a lot of people have been comparing that, Indiana and West Virginia had the exact same records this year or whatever. So it's basically not an upgrade. Absolutely not. West Virginia is an NCAA tournament team, and they should be playing this year.
I mean, I think Indiana missing was bad. West Virginia was a joke. I mean, if Indiana just missed it and Xavier, West Virginia get in over them, there's somewhat of an argument you can make. But this West Virginia team not getting in, and that's without Tucker DeVries, who we're going to probably talk about in a bit. Really a joke. So you've seen what he can do in a program quickly. It's, a style of basketball that's a lot more appealing. I think the fans are going to be a lot more happy when they see, I'm just going to bring Tucker up. I mean, you look at a guy who is, I think only played 8 games this year, but he's, 47% from 3, 7 threes a game. Attempts wise, he is they're going to shoot the ball. It's going to be a new look Indiana basketball team where we're going to see, shooting actually matter. And that's something I am really excited to see, because that's just been a glaring weakness, and it's held Mike Woodson teams back the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's a completely different style. And I was talking to a few of my buddies actually that played at Indiana State, and they actually played against Tucker DeVries, played against Darian DeVries when he was on his role at Drake, and immediately they just all had great things to say about it. The style of offense that they run is a very healthy mix. It's a very healthy balance of offense. They got shooters, and normally they have a really good guard that can go and create, that can go and score, that can go and facilitate things like that. They always have one really athletic big, that can rebound, does his job. It's a big, healthy mix. The other side of the floor, defensive wise, he has tough teams, man, and he has tough, gritty teams on the defensive end, and there's not a lot of overhelping with this team. And we saw a lot of overhelping, the past 4 years, even longer with Archie Miller with this team, a lot of struggles on the defensive end. That's not going to be the case with this DeVries team. And you mentioned Tucker. Tucker only played 8 games last year. I think if he plays a full season, there's no question that West Virginia's in the tournament, and they're comfortably in the tournament. I'd probably say an 8 or 9 seed at worst for them. But I think people aren't really realizing, or maybe they are, how great of a basketball player Tucker DeVries is. He's
gamer.
He's a game changer. 2-time Missouri Valley Player of the Year. Probably would have been first team all Big 12. And then obviously they coached the guy named Javon Small for West Virginia last year, who was first team all Big 12. So that shows you what kind of guards and what the guards can do with the DeVries system. But back to Tucker, I mean, he's a game changer. He's a mismatch, a nightmare, a big guard, a big wing, a very versatile player that can shoot the ball, lights out. He's a career 47%, or no, he's a career 36% three-point shooter. And he's just a guy that gets buckets, and he can score inside and all these kinds of things. And you also are going to get a guy that's obviously been in Darian DeVries' system for quite a while, ever since he was wearing diapers, basically. So it's a game changer of a guy that Indiana's going to get, and Indian fans are going to love him. And they're just going to love the system that Darian DeVries is going to put together in Bloomington.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I think the roster building. I mean, I don't want to get too excited at this moment in time, because I am really excited. I do really like the hire. I mean, we talked about some other names. There's some bigger names thrown out there, but let's call it how it is. I think Will Wade, it's like not official, but he's going to NC State. He was never coming to Indiana because Indiana was never going to take the baggage of him or Chris Beard. A Scott Drew, a Nate Oates is kind of iffy. So just seeing the roster construction is something I'm really, really excited to see. I'm hoping we don't have no more 2 big lineups.
I don't think it's going to be a thing.
I'd be very – yeah, and I think as of now, it's just renewing Cups who've entered the portal. If I'm
yes, as of this recording, those have been the guys. Now, obviously, that there was a little weird stuff going on with Bryson Tucker the other day. I wouldn't be shocked if it's just delayed a little bit at this point. But I guess we can kind of jump into the portal guys in this current roster. And, basically, the players at the end of the day, and this is not just Indiana, they got to do what's best for them, right? And, anytime there's a new coach, they would be stupid. Any of those players would be stupid not to, at least talk to the coach. And that's what Darian DeVries said he's going to do in his introductory press conference. He's going to talk to all the recruits, both Sicily and Zerno, and obviously the current team, and kind of see where their head at, see where there's a fit or whatever. But as of right now, Gabe Cupps and Malik Renew are in the portal. Gabe Cupps obviously didn't play at all, so he's probably going to get a medical red shirt. He would be a guy, and he's also admitted it as well. He would be a guy, that's probably going to look into this new look Indiana. And I also think he's a guy that I think DeVries would really, really want in a lot of ways, because Gabe is a very smart player, a high IQ player, a guy that is very, very coachable. And he's proven that a lot of times. And he's got toughness. And I think DeVries wants a lot of toughness in his backcourt. And Gabe Cupps could be that guy. Malik, on the other hand, no matter what happens with other players into the portal, I think this is the biggest one for Indiana. It'll probably be the biggest loss in a lot of ways, because Malik Renew's been a backbone the past 3 years for this Indiana team. Improved tremendously, 1,000-point scorer. A couple times he was honorable mention all Big Ten. So this one's going to be interesting. Gut feeling, I feel like Malik is going to move on. I have no reports or anything like that. None of the sources or anything like that are stating, otherwise. But it would suck in a way because I'm a big Malik Renew fan, and it's going to be weird seeing him in a different uniform. But obviously, he's got one more year of college basketball. I think all signs kind of point to him going back home, playing for Miami, something like that. And we'll just see. But what'd you say?
I was thinking Florida.
Florida would be one. He did decommit.
Yeah, that's why I was.
Florida. I think the coach at the time is Georgia's head coach now, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah, Mike White had the issues. I think it was like recruiting stuff. If I want to,
maybe I think
something going on there.
I think he just took the Georgia job, and Malik didn't want to go to Georgia. So, could be wrong. Fact checked us on that or whatever and stuff. But I totally expect other guys to enter the portal as well. I think Mackenzie Mbaka would be a guy that you could probably see enter the portal. Bryson Tucker, we already talked about him. Cannon Carlisle. I could even see Miles Rice enter the portal, Ja'Kai Newton, and all those guys. But, I think, as long as he gets his medical waiver, I think Luke Goody's back. I think he's already given his sign of approval with the new hire. Trent Sisley's already confirmed that he's staying. For Indiana, that Zerno is kind of iffy right now because you got a lot of other schools that are recruiting him right now. Granted, it is legal because he has not signed any papers or anything that he is totally committed to Indiana. So it'll be interesting how this roster shakes up. Me personally, I think the one guy other than Malik Renew, the one guy that I would want to see come back is Miles Rice because I think Miles Rice, this is the type of offense that or type of system and offense that I think Miles would excel at. And I think going back last year, you look at and I'll just say, I think there's handcuffs on Miles Rice, which resulted in some very up and down play out of him. He really didn't know what to do on the floor, and he wasn't using his quickness kind of like you wanted him to. So he would be a guy that I think would excel in this type of system, but obviously it comes down to what the players and what they want to do and see if they see a fit here. So this portal stuff's going to really ramp up the next couple of weeks, with this current Indiana roster.
Yeah, it's also interesting to watch because West Virginia has the top 25 class. I think last night it was reported, I want to say, that 4-star small forward Calvin Ode requested his release from West Virginia, and I would not be surprised. I think they have 3 top 100 recruits, I want to say.
Yeah, I think there was a couple in the 90s, and then I think maybe one that was a little bit better than that, if I can remember correctly. But it was a top 25 recruiting class.
Yeah, so those guys will be something to watch because those are, DeVries guys who he recruited to West Virginia. Also, you got to watch the West Virginia roster. I don't think it's been reported anyone who entered the transfer portal, but I want to make a point about this.
Has officially, but that's not a shocker or anything. He has officially entered, but nobody else, from what I can see, has officially entered the portal yet.
Yeah, and I think a big advantage for Indiana when you look at comparing it to other schools, like especially NC State, I don't think it's official. Will Wade's I don't think it's signed, but I think it was a verbal agreement as of now. We're recording Wednesday night. Indiana not being in the tournament and West Virginia not being in the tournament allowed this to get done now, which kind of gives Indiana a little bit of a head start going into next year where they can already kind of start, blueprinting, hey, this is a guy we want. This is another guy we want. Can look at West Virginia's old roster, Indiana's old roster, before a lot of these tournament teams are really fully turning their attention to next season. And it gives DeVries a little bit of a leg up to an extent, but at the same time, you're starting completely fresh. But having that start now versus, a week or two from now, I think is a big help for Indiana.
It's massive, and I've said this a few times. I said it in our quick reaction, our breaking news podcast I did with John the other day, and a few other people that I've told. I think, obviously, there was a lot of talk. Indiana's probably next head coach was going to be in the NCAA tournament, and that could have been very, very true if West Virginia had made the tournament. But if you're going to hire a guy that's not in the NCAA tournament right now, I think your top option was DeVries in a lot of ways. And, from what Scott Dawson said, it seems like he's had his eye on DeVries for quite a while now when it comes to that as a guy that could potentially be the Indiana head coach or whatever and stuff. But you talk about the heads up, the head start that they've got. And I think in this day and age of college basketball, having as much of a head start as possible is totally great because, the next few days he's going to be talking to the roster. He's going to be assembling his staff. He's going to be, the recruiting. He's going to be looking at the high school kids, the transfer portal kids, and all that stuff. He's going to have that head start. and doesn't in a good or bad way, however you want to take it, with the NCAA tournament, he's not focused on that right now. Yeah. He's focused on rebuilding this team. And what I like about the potential of Darian DeVries is I think he's going to have a system, a program where it's not every single season he's rebuilding his team with the transfer portal. I think he's going to get guys that he can develop for a few years transitionally, the guys that he's he's recruited to West Virginia. I think he's going to have a good mix of it and just kind of fill in the gaps in the transfer portal that he needs to do. Whereas, way Mike Woodson's kind of program was projecting a little bit. It looked like every single year it was going to be a fresh new 5-6 players from the transfer portal. And just every year it's just going to be no stability with it. And I think DeVries is just going to have a lot more stability when it comes to his roster and his staff, at his time with Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of talked about it. The resources are obviously immense in Indiana, but it's achievement focused, and I think that's a big thing. I personally wasn't someone that was very critical of Woodson for this, but I think a lot of people were. They kind of felt Woodson relied too much on the resources rather than the work itself. And, everyone who's kind of spoken about DeVries talks about how hard of a worker he is. I think the story about Greg McDermott, kind of his the Creighton coach, what his thoughts were. And I think his first quote was D-Rock is a dog, hard worker, grinder, called it a home run hire. I mean, everyone, I know a lot of fans aren't happy with this hire. I've seen it everywhere. I've seen fans complain, not everywhere, but I've seen a decent chunk of the fan base is not the happiest. And the truth is, they wanted this home run Scott Drew, Dan Hurley type of name. And truth of the matter is that probably wasn't ever going to happen. Brad Stevens was not coming back to Indiana, at least at this moment in time. And Darian DeVries is probably the best hire Indiana could have gotten at this moment in time. And, you could argue Will Wade, Chris Beard, but you had to know Indiana was never going to take one of those guys. The writing was on the wall the entire time. It was never really even a thought that those two would ever be the next coach of Indiana basketball. And, DeVries has shown he can turn a program around. And Indiana's starting at 19-13, just missing the tournament. You look at Drake. Drake started 17-17. He 7-win improvement there. Last year, 10-win improvement in West Virginia. So if he just improves, a little bit, Indiana's a tournament team in year one, just a little improvement. And I think there's, so much room to improve it. And you're already adding Tucker DeVries, who is a very, very good player. I think if he was in the open, portal, he'd probably be one of the top players in the portal, probably a top 5 transfer potentially. So adding a guy like that immediately is such a big boost because it fills the shooting hole you need, but also it's a guy who's, obviously a son, but experienced in DeVries' system and can kind of help set the tone culture-wise.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think looking in now, obviously, you don't have a roster right now, really. Yeah. But looking in, I think next year, I think Indiana, just based off the way that DeVries wins, he's a winner of a coach. And I think Indiana is going to be, not necessarily competing for the Big Ten championship or anything like that, but they're going to be a team that wins a lot of games. And it's all process oriented, like he mentioned, and it's pretty similar to what Cignetti does. And it is a very familiar kind of sense of how Cignetti coaches. He mentioned the process is the process. And as long as we're following that process every single day, we're going to find success. And he's like, the wins and losses will come with it. And as long as we just follow what we have put together, what my staff has put together, we will succeed here. And he seems like a coach that just really, really wants to succeed here. It's a dream job for him in a lot of ways. He's a Midwest guy. He talked about the passion that he has for Indiana, the fan base. And he can just tell that he accepts this challenge in a lot of ways. And he's taken a lot of pride in the ability to, turn this Indiana program around, get them back to consistently at the NCAA tournament, and then eventually, hanging banners, hopefully. So I like the way that he's just going with the approach right here. I think if you look at his press conference, he won the press conference. So it's exciting times for Indiana. It really is. And I think, when you sum it all up, they really, really got their guy. And this guy's going to really, really succeed at Indiana.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, I misspoke. I said West Virginia. They had the 3-man recruiting class. I talked about Calvin Oda. It's actually down to 1. Let me find it. It is Trent McLean, a 4-star power forward, decommitted from the class last night as well. So their last guy is 71 ranked according to 247, Brayton Hawthorne. So he's a West Virginia native, so not sure if he'll decommit, but it'll be interesting to follow what he ends up doing. So, two guys to watch that are, high school guys. You mentioned, like, DeVries talked about building the program from the ground up freshman-wise. So you could see, potentially 3-4 guys in this recruiting class with, if Zerno is able to, does stay committed to Indiana, in addition to Sicily. So something to watch for. There's a lot of work to be done. Signetti definitely, in my opinion, I was in the building for his press conference. I remember the feeling walking out like there was a belief. But at the same time, it's, there was a lot of work in between that and, opening day and I think it was August, or I think it was August first kickoff. But either way, there's a lot of time between right now and the opening tip-off in Hoosier Hysteria. DeVries has a lot of work cut out for him. And, everything I've heard about him and read about him makes me believe he's going to put that work in. So I'm not truly concerned. And, I think Alec mentioned it, him being 49 years old, also a huge plus. He's not an older coach, He has a lot of basketball left in him as a coach. So this isn't just like when you hired Mike Woodson, you're like, yeah, this is probably a transitional piece because he was an older coach. DeVries is someone who could be at Indiana for 25 years if he's successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then, the last thing I'll say is it's a new era in Indiana basketball. It feels weird to know that literally the old era just ended last week. It feels like it's been 2 years ago. So it's exciting times for Indiana. And I really encourage the fan base to just kind of buy into what it is. The fans that are saying this is a terrible hire, I'm gonna automatically say that they just haven't done their research on what DeVries is. So exciting times, Drew. It's exciting times, and I'm excited to see how he puts in the work and the players that he gets and the roster and stuff that he puts together, and see how that all shapes out before summer practice and all that stuff really starts to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't put it better myself. But before we wrap up, Kyle, we got to talk about the NCAA tournament that I'm not sure if we're going to release this later tonight or tomorrow morning. But if it's Thursday morning, it'll be tournament day, official start of the tournament. So, Kyle, I don't know if you have your bracket in front of you. I'm just going to ask your final four and your champion. I will give mine after. And then if you have any upset picks or stuff like that you want to share that you really are confident in or love, go for it.
I don't have my bracket in front of me. I think I remember it pretty well, but my final four was Auburn, Florida, Alabama, and I think I put Illinois. So okay. Illinois is kind of a, it's kind of a prove yourself type of thing for Illinois. I'm calling Illinois out. A lot of hype for Illinois all season was, if they can just put it together, they'll be extremely good. Their final four good. I want to prove it now. And see what they're about and stuff. So Final Four is there. I got Auburn winning it all. Auburn was my pick a while ago based off what they have. They have, a player of the year, basically. They're well coached. They're deep. And, I think we're going to roll with the Tigers here. And Bruce Pearl's going to finally get a national championship.
Yeah, we are rolling. For those, I think everyone's watching. I think it's only on YouTube right now. I turned my phone screen to show that I am not copying Kyler. I also have Auburn winning it all. My final four, Auburn, obviously. I have a Big Ten sleeper, but not as much as Illinois. I have Maryland coming out of that bracket. I think the Crab Five is so good. And then I got Duke and Houston on the other side and Auburn beating Duke. But the Crab Five, as long as Derek Queen does not make any threes, they're great. I don't know if you saw that stat. They haven't won a game when Derek Queen hits a three all year. Yeah, insane stat. A couple upsets I like. Drake is a trendy one. McNeese State is super trendy, but I'm going the opposite way. I think the Will Wade stuff hurts them. I think that hurts them badly. I think Burnell signed that extension with Clemson. I think Clemson gets there and could make a little run. The other ones I like, I feel bad for Michigan. Michigan got screwed. We talk about Indiana and West Virginia. Obviously not as bad as them, but Michigan winning the Big Ten and being a 5 is the Big Ten needs to move the tournament to Saturday or the championship to Saturday because it's a joke every single year. The Big Ten tournament final never seems to matter. And we saw it again with Michigan beating Wisconsin, and Michigan is a 5 versus arguably the best 12 seed maybe in the history of the tournament. So kind of a frustration right there if you're a Big Ten or a Michigan fan. And then the other one I kind of like is Yale over Texas A&M. No Danny Wolf, but I'm blanking on the Yale's coach's name. They beat, oh my God, I think they beat Auburn last year. Really good team.
Oh, yeah.
Lost Danny Wolf, but still really good. Won the Ivy again. So some sleeper upsets I have right there. But yeah, Kyle, would you agree with me that the Big Ten needs to move the final?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think every championship game should be on Saturday, and then Sunday should be strictly for the anticipation of Selection Sunday or the selection show or whatever. But your upsets, I like them. I think I went with most of them. I don't think I went with the Yale one. UC San Diego. I actually went with them to win a couple of games. So I really, really like them. I think I've got, you can call this an upset, I've got Oregon beating Duke at some point in the bracket. So
Jackson Shelstad.
Yeah. So I've seen Oregon. I saw them in person last week against Indiana, and I know Indiana's not Duke, but what Oregon does is just I think they're a really good team. But I don't know if there's going to be a ton of upsets this year. For me, it seems like it's pretty clear cut and dry in a lot of ways. There was at one point where I thought that all 4 number 1 seeds could make it. But that's just not going to happen. So it'll be interesting. Be very interesting.
I think when I look at the bracket, I think I see 5 teams that are clearly, head and shoulders above the rest. I throw Alabama in there as like the best 2 seed. I don't think Bama's going to win it just because I just don't trust them defensively. I think they have too many holes there. Amourier just hasn't, covered the holes I thought he would completely. But I do want to talk about one more section of the bracket that is so fun to me, and I think you know where I'm going to go with this. Kansas, Arkansas. You have Bill Self versus John Calipari, and then the winner likely gets Rick Pitino. How awesome is that?
Arkansas versus St. John's.
I want it so bad.
Rick Pitino versus John Calipari. Makes no sense. We're in the multiverse. So I've got Kansas beating Arkansas. I don't think it's going to happen. So
the other way.
I'm kind of a Debbie Downer in that way. But I think St. John's, though, they're a team I think is going to make a deep run to the Elite Eight.
They're tough.
I really like them. They're tough. And they know how to play. And obviously Rick Pitino is so back. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of upsets this year. There may be 1 or 2 or whatever. I feel like this is pretty clear cut and dry, and it's very top heavy with the 5 teams, all 4 of the number 1 seeds, and then Bama. But we'll just have to see about it. And this is the best week of the year. The best week of the year. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, nonstop basketball, and we're just going to enjoy it. We're going to sit back and relax and enjoy it. And let's hope that this is the last time in a long, long time that Indiana is not a part of this.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully we are covering a game next year, not watching from our couches. And, I might starting to get an illness where I'm, I have to stay home for the next 4 days and just can't talk to anyone.
Might have to take those sick days in March. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I'll just take all the time off I can. But for all things Indiana athletics, following Darian DeVries, his recruiting, the transfer portal, all of that, we're going to have you covered on Indiana_FRN on Twitter, Facebook, and the HoosierIllustrated.com website. And make sure you're subscribed to Hoosier Illustrated on YouTube. We have his opening press conference today with Scott Dolson and Pam Witten speaking as well. So make sure you're checking all that out. Thank you for tuning in to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast. We'll be back.